People may think that court is like what they see on TV, that crimes happen, case is open, and the case is closed in an hour.
This person did this terrible thing to our family member, and how could this not just be immediately, they go to court and you see it on Law and Order, they get arrested and arraigned and they're guilty and they go right to jail.
And of course, that's not how it works.
Unfortunately, the process does not work like that.
Cases take a long time to get through a very complicated process, years often.
There's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of court appointments that last 15 minutes and you don't understand what's going on.
Victims of crime have many rights under the Connecticut Constitution, one of which is to attend court proceedings. It can be intimidating for victims because they may be near the defendant and the defendant's family, in the parking lot, in the lobby, in the courtroom, or in the elevator. Just entering the courthouse can seem overwhelming with all of the people and the metal detectors, but there are court employees and victim advocates who can help you.
Security of everyone in the courthouse is very important. Everyone must go through the metal detectors and everyone is always screened. If a metal detector alarm sounds, additional screening may be needed. Some items are not allowed in the courthouse and they may be confiscated during screening. We try to help you clear security as quickly and respectfully as possible, because although it's necessary to keep everyone safe, we don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Judicial marshals are stationed around the courthouse. It's your right to feel protected, so if you feel unsafe or if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask us.
Office of Victim Services Advocates will meet with you, explain your rights, offer referrals, and support you through the court process, including being in the courtroom with you. OVS advocates are there at the courts with you. It's what we do.
As a victim services advocate, I work with crime victims and their families who have suffered personal injuries as a result of the crimes. We help them with their court cases. We also advise them of their rights, make sure that they're well aware of what's going on with their cases. They often call with questions or stop in with questions. Oftentimes, victim advocates will need to make referrals to other services throughout the state, and we make sure that we link our victims up with the appropriate services for them.
So my wife and I went to court the day after the crime for when the perpetrator was arraigned. And the first person we looked for was the court-based victim advocate. And she was wonderful. She accompanied us into the courtroom. She understood that we didn't know anything about the process, really. And she explained what was happening that day, and then followed up with us after court to make sure that we knew what was next.
As a family relations officer, as part of our role, and we are tasked with in the state of Connecticut, is to interview and kind of process all cases in which people are arrested for domestic violence across the state. We will interview the defendant, we will interview the victim separately. Part of that assessment process is speaking to the defendant, also speaking to the victim, and then making a written recommendation back to the court what we think should happen to that defendant.
A prosecutor is a lawyer that represents the state of Connecticut, bringing charges against an accused person who has violated the laws in our state. The prosecutor represents the state of Connecticut, not the victim. However, a victim's input is very important to the prosecutor when it comes to deciding how to resolve the case.
As the clerk of the court, my job is to make sure that the official record is kept. The role of the clerk's office is to make sure that what's said in court is accurately reflected in the file. And that information is then given to state and local authorities. And also, as a victim, you have the right to come to the clerk's office and to view the file.
We're there to assist and help people that come in that might be distraught or they have no idea why they're coming to court or what they're coming to court for. We try to point them in the right directions to go see family relations or direct them to the right court. And once they're done with court, they'll know what their next court date is. And we provide them with information or literature on what it is that they can do in the meantime for their next court date.
when a person gets arrested, they appear in court for the first time at the GA, geographical area. That person is arraigned, and part of the arraignment, the court has to determine whether or not to set a bond for that individual or whether that individual should remain incarcerated while the case is pending. A fair resolution in the case takes into account the person's history, takes into account the crime, takes into account the victim's input, if there is one, at that time. And the majority of the cases will settle at that stage.
The Public Defender's Office consists of lawyers, investigators, and social workers and support staff who are assigned to represent individuals charged with a crime who cannot afford to hire their own attorney. There are public defender's offices in each of the state courthouses. We represent an adult and/or a juvenile who might be charged with a crime.
The victim has a right for the case to be resolved in a timely manner. However, sometimes the process can be lengthy because the defendant's rights have to be balanced with the victim's rights. The prosecutor may offer that the defendant plead guilty to certain charges in exchange for a period of jail or probation. If the defendant agrees to the prosecutor's offer, the defendant will plead guilty in front of the judge in open court. It is at this time that the victim will have a right to make a statement. If the defendant does not accept the state's offer to plead guilty, then the case will be scheduled for trial. During a trial, the prosecutor will present evidence and witnesses will testify. It is up to the jury to decide whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty at that point. The state has to prove its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Whether the defendant pleads guilty or goes to trial, the case can go on for a very long time due to continuances. Continuances are requested by either the prosecutor or the defense because more work has to be done behind the scenes to prepare for the case, such as investigations, analyzing evidence, or talking to other witnesses.
In every criminal prosecution, the victim has rights. There are rights that are guaranteed by our state constitution. The victims have a right to be present in all proceedings. The victims have a right to have input as to what happens to the disposition of the case, and they have an opportunity to address the court throughout the process.
There's a lot to know when going to court, but there's also a lot of information available to help people understand it. The State of Connecticut Judicial Branch website may be helpful for planning because it has directions, pictures of the court buildings, forms, and frequently asked questions to help people better understand what happens in court. There's also a link for CT7, which is the Connecticut Victim Notification Program. CT7 is a resource that includes case lookup information, such as scheduled court dates. And remember, the staff at the Office of Victim Services are here to help, so please don't hesitate to ask questions.